Hello and welcome to Inside the Americas. I'm Delano D'Souza. Coming up on the show this week. 1 year to go before the elections in the United States. Polls aren't looking good for US President Joe Biden, but Democrats are banking on safeguarding issues like abortion rights to keeping the White House. But first, we begin with our number of the week, and that's the US president's approval rating, which has dropped to 39%. Now, the figure isn't the lowest it's ever been, but with a year to go before the presidential elections, things aren't looking too good for Joe Biden. He's trailing the Republican frontrunner Donald Trump in 5 key states. Emerald Maxwell reports.
I took a hard look at it before I decided to run, and I feel good. I feel excited about the prospects.
Back in April, US President Joe Biden seemed optimistic about his re-election chances. But a recent poll by the New York Times shows voters in crucial swing states don't share his enthusiasm. In all but Wisconsin, they say they would actually favor Donald Trump this time round.
If it becomes a rematch, which we still don't know, but if it becomes a rematch, both have a record serving as president of the United States. Both have made decisions, both on the policy front, definitely with the executive orders they've chosen, how their leadership style is.
The poll says both Biden and Trump are similarly unpopular, but voters in these battlegrounds said the nation was currently on the wrong track. Over 70% said Biden, who turns 81 this month, was too old to govern. They also preferred Trump on immigration, national security, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The poll shows that voters under 30, black and Hispanic voters, groups that backed Biden overwhelmingly in 2020, are now much more closely contested. While both men have yet to win their respective primary races to be official presidential candidates, Biden faces little opposition in the Democratic camp. And Trump leads the field among Republicans, despite his general unpopularity, his 4 indictments on criminal charges, and upcoming trial in 2024.
Over 60% of Americans want to have a trial before the election. Whether or not that happens, we don't know. The fundraising for the Republican base has been favorable. The indictments have actually helped President Trump. But again, his favorability has declined because of the indictments.
Perhaps Biden's biggest challenge is on the issue that voters said mattered most to them, the economy. Even if by most measures Americans are doing better economically than they were 3 years ago, most feel like conditions are worse. Voters polled said they trusted Trump more on the economy than the incumbent.
We can now bring in Sean Safford, Associate Professor at Sciences Po in Paris. Great to have you on the program, Sean.
Thanks for inviting me.
What is it about Joe Biden that some voters, whether they're African American or Latino, don't seem to like? Is it just his age?
The age, it's interesting, right? It's not just that he's old, it's not the number, right? Joe Biden is somebody that Americans have known really well since the 70s. And the fact that he's lost a step, that he communicates in a way that is halting, it definitely does not communicate the kind of leadership that a lot of people need and expect. That said, African American voters in general have remained relatively supportive of the president. Hispanic voters, he's seen a decline in support and some other demographics as well, for sure.
Let's talk about Donald Trump, if you will, because he has so many legal troubles against him. I don't know where to begin. How is it possible that all of this doesn't work against the former president? And is there a risk of civil unrest breaking out in the United States if he is barred from running?
There's a surface answer to that question, and there's a very profound answer to that question. The surface answer to that question is Trump is a genius, really, at the way that he communicates in a way that makes himself into a victim, when, of course, he has spent 4 years now as one of the most powerful people in the world, and remains just an incredibly powerful figure. And of course, he's been able to turn that around. People feel that his prosecution is a prosecution that is, in many ways, politically motivated.
Because he never accepted the result of the election the last time around.
Because he never accepted the election, because they identify with the idea that people on the left, the elite, is attacking him, and they see the attacks, whether it be from academics like me, or the judiciary or the press, as, in some sense, an attack on them as well.
Stay with us, Sean, because our picture of the week is of abortion rights supporters celebrating in Columbus, Ohio. This after voters in the state approved enshrining abortion rights into Ohio's constitution. Now, Tuesday's vote in Ohio is viewed as a litmus test by Democrats who are banking on safeguarding issues like abortion rights to keeping the presidency next year.
Columbus celebrates as Ohio votes to enshrine abortion rights in the state's constitution. It's a victory for Democrats in a state held by the Republican Party.
Ohioans can rest easy knowing that we will never again be denied timely medical care or be forced to leave our home for the care we need.
In summer last year, the Supreme Court overturned the Roe v. Wade ruling, dismantling Americans' constitutional right to an abortion. The question was left to states, and many restricted or banned abortions, while others reinforced their commitment to allowing the practice. In each state referendum since then, Americans have chosen to conserve abortion rights, even in conservative states like Kansas, and in many local elections, Democrats have won, like the Democratic governor of Kentucky, who was re-elected on Tuesday.
I'm going to work as hard as I can for each and every one of you. So from the Bashir family to every Kentucky family, we love you, good night, and God bless.
In Virginia, Democrats maintained the state Senate and won the House, blocking a law put forward by the Republicans to outlaw abortion after 15 weeks. President Joe Biden has got the message: campaign on abortion rights and make the election a referendum on them against Donald Trump. Some Republicans are calling for an outright federal ban on abortions, while Trump is vying to authorize them only in the cases of rape, incest, or risk to the mother. Democrats and Republicans now have a year to attune their strategies on this monumental debate on reproductive health.
We can bring in Sean Safford once again. Sean, Democrats say polls don't matter, votes matter. But how reliable is the strategy for Democrats to bank on safeguarding issues like protecting voting rights, abortion rights, when it comes to keeping the White House next year?
The abortion issue is extremely important, although I think when you dig into the weeds a little bit, as we all know, the election happens in the United States, the presidential election happens in the United States on a state-by-state basis. So what we've absolutely seen since Roe v. Wade was overturned a year ago now, it is massively motivating, not only for Democratic voters, but voters in the center, right, who cross party lines in some ways to support women's access to abortion services. The question will be really, will that be a motivating factor next year in the states that count, in states like Iowa, Wisconsin, Arizona, Pennsylvania? We know that there could be a ballot initiative on the ballot next year in Pennsylvania, and so that's in a sense good for Biden. That'll bring out that base because, of course, the problem that Biden has right now is that there's some broad support, there's some questions about his leadership, but there's the biggest problem that he probably has at this point is enthusiasm, right? He has to motivate people to get to the polls, younger people, African Americans, and all the rest. So where he can count on abortion, then he's going to be able to count on motivating people who are a little bit on the fence about him.
Because one of the things about Joe Biden's presidency is when it comes to the economy, it's one of his bright spots because the way his administration has gone about tackling inflation in terms of creating jobs, etc., wages have gone up. Yet people they're not seeing this change. Why is that?
I think there are two reasons. One is, again, it's not necessarily his age, but the way that he communicates, his style, he's not always connecting with people. And it's been very difficult for him in some ways to really just promote himself. Of course, this is not a problem that Donald Trump has. The deeper problem is that when you look at aggregate numbers in the United States on the economy, in some ways they are misleading. The economy has recovered to a great degree, better than many economies in Europe have recovered. But that said, and this has been true in the United States for a generation now, there is a disconnect between what happens on the coasts, the parts of the country that are well connected to the global economy and tourism and all the rest of these things, and the rest of the country.
Middle America.
And those are the places that have been really struggling, not only economically, but also voting for Donald Trump.
That's where he's been trying to get those manufacturing jobs. I want to talk about foreign policy because this, of course, is something that doesn't seem to weigh on elections in the past. But recently, given what's happened in the Middle East, we have seen the Biden administration really embrace the state of Israel and Netanyahu. Could this cost him, given the pushback we've seen out on the street?
It's complicated. Of course, this isn't necessarily a calculated political move on the part of Joe Biden. He has had a deep and long-standing commitment to the state of Israel, and I think that comes out of a deep place for him. So his reaction to that was immediate, and for the most part, he had a positive reaction to that. But of course, there are now groups, particularly on the Democratic side, younger voters on the Democratic side, who have much more sympathy for Palestine, for Palestinians, who are pushing the Biden administration to be more proactive on that side of things. The real question will become, for instance, in the state of Michigan, there's a big population of Muslim Americans who are voters in Michigan. They came out very strongly for Joe Biden in the last election. We know that Michigan will once again be a swing state this year. And if those voters feel demotivated, unmotivated to go to the polls, he only won that state by a couple thousand votes, and that could be enough to tip the balance.
Sean, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the program today.
Okay.
And that wraps up this edition of Inside the Americas. From all of us on the team, thank you very much for watching.